and welcome to another edition of Why Are You Laughing at Me? With me, Gherkin Picklewater, and my special guest today, Steve Smith. Steve Smith is a past director of the Clown College at Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, director of Barnum and Bailey Circus, a director of circuses, a creative director, a clown, famously TJ Tatters, and many, many other things. And I'm very happy to have him on the program today. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Good evening. So nice to be with you.
So I guess we should start with the questions that is at the core of the whole conversation, which is, what is funny?
Surprise is funny. The unexpected is funny. I love nothing more than, well, my favorite stooges are children and pets because there's no filter. They just do what they do. And that almost always is hilarious.
That's very nice. Yeah, I get fed a lot of cute and funny kid content on the internet. Just my algorithm knows that that's what appeals to me. Just tons of a lot of kids falling down though, which I don't like as much, but a lot of kids just being very open. Like recently I was watching a video in which they're showing a small toddler being held by his parent, a python, and the toddler reaches out, grabs the python by the head, and tries to stick it in its mouth. And that's amazing. That's spectacular.
That's funny. I love the ones where it's like a beautiful suburban dinner party, welcoming the new neighbors, and the hosts are the only ones who have children. So they're sitting down, with the candles are lit, and the wine has been poured, and the 2-year-old comes running out and goes, "I poopied in the potty." To me, those are kinds of moments that you can't rehearse.
Well, speaking of childhood, you've been doing comedy for a very long time.
Yes.
What brought you towards comedy in the first place? What was your initial inclination, and why did you end up pursuing it as a career?
Well, I grew up in the dark ages, so that my exposure to comedy was limited. I grew up in a very small town in Ohio, and our TV station, we got 4 channels. I know we've heard this story 1,000 times, but that was true. Four stations. So what I got exposed to were Warner Brothers cartoons. So any of the Looney Tunes and the Merry Melodies, especially those directed by Chuck Jones, spoke to me. I understood. I understood the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. I understood the nonverbal form of what they were doing. I understood the timing of it. I don't know why I did, but I did. But I also was fortunate enough to grow up with people like Soupy Sales, who today could never have had a television program, but between the pie throwing and the old time films that he used to show, these were my early exposures to comedy. Now, yes, I did love the classics. I was impressed by Chaplin, but I laughed at Laurel and Hardy. I was enamored with Keaton, still am. But laughed at the Marx Brothers. So I'm not quite sure what categories you put all of that into, but these were early influences. Not to mention that there was a company called Black Hawk, and you could rent 8mm or Super 8mm films of these silent clowns, which is how I did my initial study of physical comedy.
That's amazing. So you were pulling in this information. You went out looking for this and absorbed it on your own. It wasn't like it was available easily in your environment. You actually had to go dig up these resources.
Yes, exactly. And you may not know this about me, dear sir, but I'm a small statured man, and I didn't get my growth spurt until after high school. So I was tiny, but I observed that I could use that to my advantage. There's just something funny about the little guy who can run between the legs of the basketball star, that can endear you to, and that's how I would make new friends, was through physical comedy. So I studied my lessons by watching cartoons and then put them into practical effect in my real life.
So you were using comedy in your social life as a youth.
Yes, for acceptance. Yeah, absolutely. I had no other skill.
I
I was in the marching band in high school, but other than that, I had no skill. So comedy was going to be it.
I envy. That's a weird thing to say, that I envy the fact that you had to use comedy to connect. I didn't have comedy or humor as a child, and so I never found that skill set. I didn't start pursuing being funny until I was in a middle-aged man. I went to the clown conservatory in my 30s, and that's around when I started trying to pursue comedy as a lifestyle and as a career. So it was I never had that connection, and I know a lot of people find that that their humor comes from their childhood experiences, especially with a lot of people with bullying or other types of. Okay, so I didn't want to presume, but yeah, so you found comedy helped you deal with that.
Not only at school with the bullies, and I'll tell you a quick story about that, but I grew up in a rather violent, chaotic home. And so comedy was a great release. It was an escape for me. So the more time that I could spend watching not only the great silent clowns, but these cartoons and crazy TV kids show hosts, the more ammunition it gave me. It became my shield and my sword against the world. My sense of humor was the thing that was going to keep me moving forward through life. And somehow I knew that at a very young age. I did have bullies. In junior high school, Theodore Roosevelt Junior High, it had hallways that were so wide. I can still think, you could drive cars going both ways down these hallways and waxed to the nth degree. But there were these three guys who loved picking me up and throwing me in the garbage can. They just thought this was hysterical. So I concocted a plan. Super genius. I set my props. I was standing ready in front of the garbage can where they used to get me, and I began to hear the clip clop of their feet on that waxed floor. And they saw me, and I went, ta-da! And they came running at me. And as they did, I dove into the garbage can, came back up with a banana peel on my head, and went, "Hi, fellas." And from that moment on, they went from being my bullies to being my bodyguards. That one little act, that stupid little gag, flipped the script and made all the difference in the world, especially in junior high school.
That's amazing. So junior high, wow, that's yeah, that is a solace I wish that I had myself, and it's so wonderful that you found something to help you make it through what is a really rough period in people's lives.
Yeah, or you could call it desperation comedy, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of epiphany comes out of desperation. A lot of artistic growth and inspiration comes out of the fact that you don't have another option. Um, Speaking of that, and pain in general, it's often said that there's nothing funny without some pain in it. So, to what degree do you think? How much crying does it take to make something funny?
Ah, yes. Well, there's that fine line between comedy and the pathos of the clown, um, and it's a fine line because we have to be careful not to become cloying or demanding of empathy. If we just rely on the base knowledge that all of us have been hurt in one way or another, we have been laughed at. So what happens if you turn that funhouse mirror to life and make everybody else laugh at themselves? And that's really the key in helping people enjoy the purity of that kind of laughter that covers over the pain.
I've always, to this degree specifically, and I've said this many times, I feel like when you make yourself, the social martyr, that's a pretty heavy term for it, but when you put your when you exile yourself from the social group to be the thing that gets laughed at for violating taboo or for being wrong in some way, you're bringing everyone else together who's laughing at you as a pack, as or a tribe or some kind of engineered social group, of giving them a sense of belonging together. Not only are they strengthened by the fact that they're not the one making the mistake, they're not the one getting laughed at, they're the one who gets to laugh. It gives them a sense of connection to everyone else in the room who's doing that. At least that's how I've seen it.
Yes, well, they become co-conspirators. You become unified in a way. The people who are laughing at you and the people who are laughing with you, and the people who can see the pain underneath that laughter, but it's not, you're not hitting people over the head with that. I just came back from my 55th high school reunion. But and some of those bullies, bodyguards, are still there. But they didn't try to throw me in a garbage can, so I was happy.
That's good. So do you still perform at all?
Rarely, rarely. I made a conscious choice a few years ago. You know when you, because I've been a very physical performer. And now that I'm a man of a certain age, uh, I cannot do a lot of the things that I used to do. And I find it more frustrating than fulfilling to try to not recapture what I had, but to build on a career's worth of work. Um, and so, if you consider public speaking, performing, that would be about the limit of what I do now. I'm just not capable of doing what I used to be able to do, and I don't want it to. Do you ever watch a performer who's gone past their prime and maybe somebody should have said, it'd be better if you stopped right now? Before somebody whispers that in my ear, I thought, I'm just going to lay this down now. I've had a very fulfilling career as a performer and still feel as a public speaker that I get that same vibe.
So are you doing a lot of public speaking?
I try. I have a gig coming up in Mexico City in a couple of weeks at a big arts festival. After all, comedy is universal.
That's great. Well, thinking back to when you were performing and creating material to perform, um, something I like to ask people is, how do you deal with failure when you get up there and it just bombs? It just doesn't work. What do you do? What is your response
You mean after you get done weeping and, and crying into the pillow and pounding the wall? Well, uh, um, you try to dissect that situation to find out why. Why did it fail? Did you try too hard? Did you push for the laugh? Did you not hold for the laugh? This is why it's so valuable to always have videotape of no matter what you do, when you do it, for whom you do it. It should be videotaped so that you can study it, not for broadcast quality, obviously, but just so you can study where you might have tripped up and made a mistake and left your audience behind, so that the big laugh that you thought you were going to go for, the one you thought it was going to land on this particular beat, and there's the crickets. There's no lonelier feeling in the world, I think, than that moment in time.
yeah. Um, I'm still learning how to deal with that. And I talk to stand-up artists, stand-up comedians, and their focus seems to be how to respond to it in the moment more than necessarily how to grow from it in the future. Though I think that's everyone's concern. Everyone is going to be like, how do I make this better? How do I use this to hone and refine? Um, so we talked about what you found funny as a child.
Yeah.
Horrible segue. Sorry, terrible segue. What do you find funny now? You talked a little bit about surprise, but in general,
Wah, wah.
yeah, what do you find funny now?
Um, Well, I still love anytime authority gets a finger poke in the eye. I always find that very funny. I love when I lived in Chicago, I used to take the 36 bus up Clark to Broadway just to watch people. Holy cow, people are hysterical. The businessman in his Brooks Brothers suit who comes bounding to the bus to get on and trips on that first step and pretends that he didn't. This to me is, you can't pay for a scene like that. It almost always is watching people when they least expect it. I took my cue from Oliver Hardy, who used to sit in hotel lobbies to watch people, which, so the story goes, is how he came up with his exaggerated signature because he would watch these businessmen check into the hotel, and one after another, the signature seemed to get bigger and grander as the men decided they were more important than the guy who was in front of them. Um, so I too have spent a lot of time in the hotel lobbies just watching people be people.
Oh, that's great. And so much of that is can be defined as slapstick. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. Now, I made a list of I was just thinking about, who did I watch and who inspired me? And I won't bore you with all of this, but from Don Rickles to Foster Brooks to Jackie Gleason, Red Skelton, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Rodney Dangerfield, Phyllis Diller, Sid Caesar, Imogene Coca, Robin Williams, of course, Dimitri, Elaine Boozler, Victor Borg, Moms Mabley, Otto Griebling, Lou Jacobs, Greg DeSantos, Steve Copeland, Ryan Combs, Mark Dindick, Chris Allison, Shields and Yarnell, Lily Tomlin, Monty Python, Faulty Towers, Menozio Brass. Do you know who they are?
No.
Okay, I'm sure I'm butchering how you say it because it's spelled Mnozil. They're an Austrian brass septet who are fabulous musicians, but hysterical comedians. Anyway, the piece that I saw was called Lonely Boy. So when you get a chance, check it out. That is the kind of humor that appeals to me. Somebody who can do something very, very well and then make fun of it. Um, and then, of course, Rowan Atkins, Mr. Bean, his drum solo on the imaginary drum set is a classic. Ali Wong, Michelle Wolf, Wanda Sykes, Chris Rocks, Gabriel Iglesias, Hannah Gadsby. The list goes on and on and on. I love discovering new people. I'm not up to speed with who's current and who's not. My Netflix subscription ran out, so I don't really have that to go by anymore. But when I land on somebody who really makes me laugh, it's usually because they are being honest and authentic in whatever form that they're presenting themselves.
Honesty and authenticity, and you mentioned virtuosity,
Yes.
being good enough to make fun of what you do, to be exceptional. Harpo Marx, obvious cliched example of that, but I was just sharing that with my wife. My wife didn't know that's why he was called Harpo, or
Oh,
Kiko
well,
Fix, or
and why would she? I mean, it's only been a few, I don't know, decades since since the Marx Brothers were prime time players. But it's important for us who do this craft to know of these artists, um, 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 uh, to build on what our comedy is going to be all about. It's important to watch what they did. The Marx Brothers. I'm not sure about this, but um, uh, because they broke the fourth wall, it took the audience off guard, and it's that moment of gasp and then outrageous laughter because you can't believe that somebody who was on stage in a format that we all were kind of trained to respect, and when the curtain opens we're quiet and we applaud when we're supposed to applaud, but when the actors turn to the audience and start telling the jokes directly to us, um, that was something new. That was
Well,
something.
that's so interesting. I mean, we just accept that part of clown is that lack of fourth wall, is that interaction with the audience. But
Sure.
you feel like in that era, that wasn't as much the standard.
I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that. I believe that the Warner Brothers cartoons took their cue from vaudeville and the vaudevillians who broke the fourth wall all the time. Bugs and Daffy break the fourth wall all of the time, and to great effect. And to great effect.
And vaudeville is such a great example of the Marx Brothers in vaudeville. Such a great example of iteration and creating material, because what they would take a show on the road for a year or so and hone it and then film it, and that's how they made their movies. Right? Is they would tour it and then film it.
That's right. That's right. And it was they were breaking new territory. I'm sure they had show promoters scared to death that no one was going to come see them.
And no way of knowing what was going to happen on that stage as it's changing.
Well, yes, which is why we should all pay homage to Margaret Dumont, because talk about a straight man, straight woman, for Groucho, especially to play against. She was the best, the best.
So before I have a couple more little questions for you before we wrap up, but I'd like to know a little bit. I don't think you and I have ever talked about this. You were a children's TV host for a while.
Yes, he laughed. Yes, I was.
What was that like, and how did it work for you?
So, uh, after my time as advanced clown for Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, I took a leave of absence. I think it was my second, to go to get my BFA in acting from the Goodman School of Drama in Chicago. Then Ringling called, and I went back on the road. And I thought, you know what? I got an acting degree. I'm going to be an actor. So I moved back to Chicago and became a bartender, because that's what you do, because you bartend at night and audition during the day. And one of those auditions was this big cattle call audition at the NBC affiliate in Chicago, and I got the gig. So I was a co-host with a preteen uh, uh, girl. And we were on the air for 7 seasons, which is forever in television business,
Yeah.
on the NBC affiliate in Chicago. And it was, I would call it, the amateur hour for the Acme set. We brought on kids who had a band, who had a butterfly collection, who told stories, and we gave them a forum to be on TV. So my role really was just as host, just as to introduce people and to keep the show moving. And over the 7 years, I had 5 different preteen co-hosts, and what it did was help remind me of a lesson I learned during my advanced work for Ringling, which is respect the medium that you're in. When you're performing on television, if you're as big as you are in a circus ring, you'll scare your audience to death. So you have to modulate your performance energy. And television is one of those things that you really have to understand the frame and where you fit into that, and how much your action and reaction is going to get caught, and whether you've conferred with the director beforehand about a bit you want to do. Because if you haven't, the bit's going to get lost because they haven't got the camera set in the right place. So it was a great experience, and it afforded me the opportunity to form my own production company, which is how I produced my clown show in Chicago, which is what led to becoming the director of the Clown College for Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey.
That's so great. So all off of Cattle Call audition.
Yeah, cattle call audition.
How
Yeah.
do you feel about auditioning, especially cattle calls, but in general, how do you feel about auditioning? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with rejection and the actual process itself?
It sucks. um, I try to always go in, first of all, somewhat prepared, but to have a good time. I figure whoever is sitting behind that desk has had it up to here with the producers yammering in their ear about budget and this, that, and the other thing. Whatever the specific role is that I'm auditioning for, I try to keep it contained to that and try to keep it fun. And I figure if I'm going to have fun, they'll have fun too. And then let it go. because it's not the end of the world. That the cattle call audition I went on, there are 150 short bald guys in the room. It could have been any one of us who got that job. I just happened to get the lucky straw.
That's cool. I mean, it's great that you got it and that it led to the career that you had.
Yes, we were fortunate in receiving 5 Emmy Awards. Now I do call them Emmets because they're regional Emmy Awards and they're literally smaller than primetime Emmy Awards. I guess they don't want you to get too big of a head. So the Emmets and what I can say about them is that it does help you as you progress in your career. Those earmarks, that recognition from people in the business, it helps in that fashion. But you can't wear it on your shoulder like epaulets. Walk into the room with your resume standing on your chest. And they're very nice to have, and they were very beneficial in the business end of show. But other than that,
Yeah. Well, so if people want to see you perform or speak or so on, where can they find your work?
Um, well, depends on what day your garbage pickup is, I suppose. I have no online presence. There are things you can find if you snoop a little bit, uh, um, um, but most of the stuff that I've done. For instance, directing the Big Apple Circus, 4 productions over 5 years. Um, that's work that I'm very proud of. And those are things that you can find online, starting in 2005, going to 2010. Any of the editions of the Big Apple Circus in that time period. Um, so that's work that I'm proud of.
Okay, great. All right, then I won't ask you about your socials since you don't have social media. Can you end with us by telling me a joke? Doesn't have to be your favorite, just a joke you like.
Oh my God. I don't have one, Abraham. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I caught you completely off guard. I will tell you a joke then.
Yep, go ahead.
Um, why did the mouse go to prison?
Why did the mouse go to prison?
Crimes. That's it. That's the whole joke.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. It was wonderful talking to you, and I will talk to you hopefully again very, very soon
From Baraboo, Wisconsin.
in Baraboo, Wisconsin. All right, I'll see you later, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Ciao for now.